She showed him the world she wanted to build, but he never even looked up from his phone. She shared her dreams with him, but his eyes were already somewhere else far away from her. She circled the dates that mattered most to her, but he walked right past without ever noticing. She talked with so much life and excitement, but his silence slowly swallowed every single word. She lay awake beside him in the dark, wondering how someone so close could feel so far away. One cup untouched and one empty chair said everything that neither of them had the courage to say. She sent her heart in a message every morning, but his silence was always the only reply she got. They walked side by side, but the space between them felt wider than any distance she had ever known. She wanted nothing more than for him to just look up and see how hard she was still trying for him. She stopped herself from speaking, because deep down she already knew he was not really listening anymore. He laughed at everything on that screen, except the woman sitting right beside him, quietly breaking apart inside. She reached for his hand and he let her hold it, but there was nothing left inside that touch anymore. She stood at the window, watching the rain fall alone, while he sat behind her, not noticing her silence. She held herself tightly in the dark, because the person who should have held her had already let go inside. She sat alone, holding her own hands, finally understanding that the person she loved had already quietly given up. She poured her heart out, hoping he would finally hear her, but his face stayed cold and completely empty of feeling. She broke down crying right in front of him, but his eyes showed nothing because his heart had already left long ago. She fell apart on the floor while he calmly put on his jacket and walked out like her pain meant absolutely nothing at all. He slept through the night in perfect peace while she lay wide awake, replaying every moment, wondering where it all went wrong. She found herself begging for the kind of love that should have never required a single word of begging in the first place. She carried the weight of everything alone while he walked beside her without ever offering to help her. She put her whole heart into that surprise for him, but he walked in and did not even notice it. She reached out her hand toward him one more time, but he kept both hands in his pockets, looking away. She could not wait to tell him her good news, but his eyes never even lifted to look at her. She prepared everything perfectly and waited with so much hope, but the chair across from her stayed empty all night. She cried and begged him to just feel something for her, but his face stayed completely cold and unmoved by her pain. Her tears fell right in front of him, and yet his eyes stayed empty, like none of it touched him. She broke completely on that floor, and he simply stood up, put on his jacket, and walked away without looking back. He closed his eyes and slept without a single worry, while she stayed awake, carrying the weight of everything alone. She got down on her knees and begged for love that she should have never had to beg for at all. She typed every word of that apology through her tears, and he read it, put his phone down, and moved on. She stood at that door with her hand reaching forward, watching him walk away without once turning back for her. She sat on that bench and watched the delivered notification turn into minutes, then hours, with still no reply coming. She looked at herself in that dark window and asked why she was always the one who had to apologize first. She spoke from the deepest part of her heart to him, while he quietly checked his watch, waiting for her to finish. She felt completely trapped by a love that had already left, too afraid to stay and too broken to walk away yet. No matter how many times she tried to make it work, the pieces of this relationship simply refused to fit together anymore. She kept pouring every last drop of her love into something that was too broken and too cracked to ever hold it. Every single day felt like walking across the thinnest possible glass, terrified that one wrong step would shatter absolutely everything completely. She smiled through every bit of the pain because she was far too exhausted to let anyone see how broken she truly was. She shared every detail of her day with him, but he had stopped being curious about her life long ago. She held up everything she had worked so hard for, and his eyes showed not even a flicker of pride. She opened her heart and shared her deepest pain with him, while he scrolled through his phone, not hearing a single word. She stood right beside him in that crowded room, and yet felt more invisible and alone than she ever had before. She sent him her most vulnerable words in a voice message, and he listened for 2 seconds, then put his phone away. Every single morning she woke up and reached for her phone, hoping today would finally be the day he reached out first. She studied every expression on his face before she dared speak, trying to figure out if today was safe enough for her. The moment he walked in with that cold look on his face, she immediately made herself smaller, quieter, and almost invisible for him. He gave her one small smile, and her whole entire world lit up, because that was all she had left to hold. She measured every single word at that breakfast table, so carefully, terrified that saying the wrong thing would ruin everything again today. At 3 in the morning, when the world went completely silent, the truth she had been running from finally caught up with her. A quiet voice deep inside her had been whispering the truth for so long, but she was too afraid to finally listen. She scrolled through those old photos and remembered a version of love that felt so real, but now seemed like a lifetime ago. She stood at that crossroads in the dark, not knowing whether staying would save her or leaving would finally set her free. She slowly opened her hands and let go of the one thing that had been quietly draining every last piece of her soul. She stood in the middle of that storm and finally chose herself for the very first time after so long of choosing him. She sat beneath that quiet sky and held her own hand, gently learning that she had always been enough, all on her own. From the very deepest and darkest place she had ever been, she finally found the strength to slowly begin rising again. She walked forward into that golden light with her head held high, leaving behind every single thing that had ever made her feel small. She finally chose her own peace, her own healing, and her own love, and for the first time in so long she felt truly free.